sometimes struggle to get up in the morning or wind down for bed at night? I used to find it so difficult. I woke up with no sense of positivity and brightness. I was void of motivation and spirit. This changed completely when I started waking up with a Lumi body clock. These incredible devices mimic the light and colour of a real sunrise and sunset, transforming the experience of waking up and going to sleep completely. Rather than being suddenly woken up with an alarm clock, the Lumi body clock will wake you up gradually with a natural sunrise. The Lumi body clock has been shown to improve the quality of sleep and awakening and to boost mood and productivity in clinical trials. You can personalise your sunrise and sunset from 15 to 90 minutes with their clinically tested unique natural light and more than 20 sleep and wake sounds. We all deserve to sleep well and to wake up feeling fresh. So if you're finding this a challenge and you want to try a new approach, go to lumi.com.
The immediate family, I mean, some people look at this as an offshoot from the group The Section, which we had back in the early 1970s, which was James Taylor's band and Jackson Browne's band. We would go on the road with them and open the shows with our music, and then we would play their shows. And it was Russ Kunkel, Danny Kortchmar, Craig Durgee, and myself. And we were a kind of a rock fusion instrumental group. Now, lo, these many, many decades later, Danny Kortchmar got offered a record deal with a label out of Japan. I think it's Vivid Records. And so to come up, with what they wanted him to do was make an album of songs he had written, produced, or whatever he had a part of through his career, kind of to record them the way he himself felt them. And he took a chance. He didn't think any of us would be around, but he called Russ and I, Kunkel and I, and we were both in town. And this wasn't going to take a long time. We know what we do. And we were anticipating probably about 4 or 5 days at the most in the studio. Well, we got in the studio. Danny had hooked up during this period, at least like 6 months beforehand or so, with a friend of ours named Steve Postel. And they lived right near each other, and they did some gigs together. And Steve helped him with pre-production. So when it came time to go in the studio, Steve came along also. We wanted Waddy Wachtel also, but Waddy was on the road at that time with Stevie Nicks, but he was going to be in town for the last day of recording. So he came down, and we cut all these tracks, and we cut a ton of songs, and songs like Machine Gun Kelly that James Taylor had covered, All She Wants to Do Is Dance, and Dirty Laundry that Kootch wrote with Don Henley. So we completed the album, and then I guess when the label was going to call it Danny Kortchmar, and Danny came up with the name Immediate Family. He said, look, these guys really are my immediate family. We've been together over 50 years. And except for Postel, who's like the new kid on the block, he's he's like 10 years younger than everybody else. So we just give him a lot of crap. So Danny came up with the Immediate Family idea, and it's a very different animal than The Section was in terms of it's more pop driven. There's vocals on everything. And then we went to Japan and toured over there, did a live album over in Japan, and came back and got a record deal in America with a label, Quarto Valley Records. And so we've been with them and gigging, and now we're just about finished with a new album.
Oh, wow.
It's in being mixed right now. Nico Bolas, who engineered and mixed the previous album and engineered this one, is mixing this one. I think he's 7 tracks into it. We got about 14 or 15 songs, and it's some of the best stuff we've ever done. The writing is really incredibly good on this. Performances are great, and we have gigs starting in November, I believe, out here on the West Coast. And in the interim of all of this stuff, Denny suddenly came along and pitched doing a documentary about us, and for the past, I don't know, 4 years now, has it been that you've been working on this?
Just before COVID, so in 2019.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
3 years.
Yeah, few years here. And for me, I was thrilled and alarmed at the idea of it, because the Wrecking Crew movie to me is one of the best music documentaries anybody's ever done. And I loved I knew most everybody in the Wrecking Crew and worked with most of them. So it was thrilling. But the idea from my standpoint is I'm used to always being asked, can we do an interview with you about so-and-so? I've never been the center of attention, which all of a sudden the group is finding itself as the artist rather than the side person that's going to spend a minute being interviewed on camera. So when I finally saw it, I kind of just sat there in sort of disbelief, kind of going, this is so weird. It's like we're the center of this thing. But Denny's done an unbelievably fabulous job on this. He's an incredible, he paid me for all this bullshit I'm telling you right now.
Just for the listeners, ask first of all about the Wrecking Crew and the reception that it had. Was that what kind of gave you the impetus to start this? And were you still wrapping up the Wrecking Crew project when you had this idea?
No, Wrecking Crew, I started in 96, and then it really went all the way to 2015 when it was about distribution, and Magnolia picked it up then. So I had been done with the Wrecking Crew, but there was a lot of post-traumatic stress from Wrecking Crew because it took so long to get it made, because I started when my father was passing away in 96, 97. So I never got it really finished for the festivals until 2008. And then no one wanted to help us because the music was going to cost so much. So it wasn't until 2014 that I pay everybody off that we were able to find someone to pick up the documentary, Wrecking Crew. So my concern was, I don't ever want to do another music doc again, unless it's literally a harmonica player and he's a soloist. That's it. And he's written his own stuff. Because I was frightened. Not frightened, but you know what I mean? It's exhausting to deal with music. And the other thing is, there's a lot of great stories out there. I'm an amazing group of stories. Every town has somebody, every city, there's always something there, but you got to find a hook, in a lot of ways. And, and then this came up, these producers came to me and said, would you be interested in doing this? I jumped at it, and luckily the guys, Leland, and I only knew Leland really. I didn't know the other guys. I knew of them, they're all legends, but it was like Leland was always there for the Wrecking Crew. So in a sense that was my only knowledge or personal knowledge or knowing these guys. But it made total sense to jump to this, because in the end of the Wrecking Crew, and I don't know if you remember this, Leland, Lou Adler, my question to Lou was, what made the change? Was it when you start doing Tapestry, he goes, it wasn't a conscious decision for him to use other musicians at that point. When Carole King did Tapestry, he goes, Carole brought in her own people. She brought in, James Taylor and Danny Kortchmar, those were her friends. So it seemed like the perfect segue from Wrecking Crew into the next era, and it was a perfect layoff, really. And the idea, the fact that they were called the immediate family was the hook for me, because, at the beginning of Wrecking Crew, I said the words were, this is the story of my father and his extended family, the Wrecking Crew. So it's kind of weird when you think about it, because it's not a conscious decision. It was almost like, here it is, let's lay it up for you, Denny, take it. And then, the obvious comparisons are, from both sides of the world, the Wrecking Crew and these guys. The differences are really the things. My dad and those guys went did 3-hour sessions. They were boom, 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 boom. You know, you had 3 hours to knock off 3 or 4 songs, and you could do 3 or 4 of those dates a day. And they never really spent time on things as much. And then these guys came in, and, you know, and I'll let Leland take it from there. And then Leland went on the road, and these guys went on the road to support the things they recorded. Wrecking Crew never did that. So it was kind of a nice, you know, it was a good comparison, as well as, you know, you could see the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a amazing story in the sense that it wasn't something that you sought out, but it is the perfect like sequel in a way to the Wrecking Crew movie. And I mean, arguably, you've covered essentially the 2 most important groups of musicians, well, the most important groups of musicians from the 60s and then the 70s. What Leland was touching upon earlier about suddenly being the artist as opposed to the sideman, is that something that you're enjoying and the guys in the band are enjoying, or is that something that you're finding a bit of a drag?
Oh, it'll never be a drag. It would never be a drag. It's just unique at this point. It's something that we've never really, I mean, I get stopped on because I've committed to an image that is recognizable. I can't go to the supermarket without somebody stopping and asking, you look just like Lee Sklar, kind of thing. It's never bothered me. I really enjoy, you know, talking to people and stuff, and always having been a sideman, it's always been very benign, where like if I was Phil Collins and somebody saw me, they would be crapping their pants. But they come up to me and they go, God, I saw you with Phil Collins, man. You guys played. I love it. It's a really easy relationship that I have. So suddenly to find yourself more of the center of attention, because I've always been a peripheral person, and you know, I've always been floating on the outside of all of this stuff. So it's interesting. I think the thing I'm most curious about is going to be this coming Friday. When we play when we're at the very first film festival of hopefully a whole bunch of them yet to come, to actually sit with an audience and see people that aren't involved in this, watching it and see what their response is, see what it means to them, and doing a Q&A afterwards and talking to people and get a feel for it, because we're too close. But one of the things I remember Denny and I talked about way early on in this is when, you know, there was the whole thing with the Wrecking Crew that they really were studio musicians, and they cranked out day after day as many sessions as they wanted to fit into their schedule they would be hired for. And but it was really over about a 10 to 12 year period, I think, that they were really at the height of their powers, where with us, the unique part of this group of guys is we've been doing this for now 52 years together, and we still work. Yeah. Russ Kunkel and I just got off the road with Lyle Lovett. We just spent the whole summer out. So I'm sitting there looking next to me at Russ, who I've been looking at next to me for 52 years, and we're still loving playing together. We get off every night. People comment at all the gigs. They go, "It's so amazing to watch you guys play together. It's like this thing that happens." And it's the same with all of us. So it's a different kind of thing. This has been a really long-term relationship. And for the fact that we are like just finishing a new album, I mean, we're not like a nostalgia group who had hits in the 80s and we're going out on the road doing our songs from the 80s. I mean, we're going out with all new material that people haven't heard before. So it's still a real viable, exciting project to be involved with. And it amazes me. It really kind of blows my mind that we've had this longevity. I mean, when you look at groups like the Stones and these groups like that, there's just a few out there that really have held on to it, even though with us, we're actually the same guys intact. It's not like any members have changed. All we did was add Steve Postel to the mix. But Waddy joined up with us in the mid 70s, and we've all been, you know, working as a family in different, you know, like Russ and I go out. I'll go out and do sessions with Waddy or with Kootch, And then there's times where they want to have the entire group on a project. And like we just did Susanna Hoff's album from the Bangles, and we were all on that. So there's, you know, I mean, there's a vibrance to this group of people. To me, that's as dynamic today as it was when we first played together in 1970.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a huge difference between, you know, when I was interviewing my dad and those guys, you know, they were in their 60s or whatever, 70s, they weren't playing. The only one of that group still plays is Don Randy, and that's it. You know, he's 85. But at that point, their careers, once studio work stopped for everybody, it was it. You know, these guys never had that. There wasn't a cutoff for them. You know, they were continuing to do studio work, but also they were continuing to do road stuff, you know, or, you know, live stuff. So that's a huge difference in their careers, you know. And so that's what's so great about it. The fact that, you know, and they're not even, it's not like like you said, it's not a nostalgia band. And what's amazing is you're watching 4 or 5 of the great musicians, some of the greatest musicians, and I hate to say at this age, because it doesn't matter. You're 75, 74, it doesn't matter. You're still kicking its ass as if you guys were 24. So it's the same guys. It's just, you know, they're just a little grayer and some bolder.
A lot grayer.
and
a lot bolder for us.
Denny,
yeah,
with the movie,
yeah.
Was it a challenge, or how did you strike the balance between discussing kind of the the huge amount of credits? I mean, is Leland, I think, the most, or I've heard stats, sort of the most credited bass player in the history of popular music or something like that. And everybody in the band has played on so many incredible records. How difficult was it to strike the balance between covering all of that side of things and then actually focusing on what's arguably more exciting, in that they're now making albums under the name The Immediate Family and this new story?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, here's the thing is, you got to hook the audience. It's easy to hook an audience with just the hits. You know, every one of them has huge hits. They all, you know, there's a lot of them. But it's really, it comes down to the story. It's not a jukebox, you know, you could play all the time. But if you don't have something in between the real story and the heart, it's just a jukebox, you know, documentary. And, you know, and I don't want to do that. I want to know what, you know, I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know their beginnings, why, you know what I'm saying? In Immediate Family, it's not also, we're not doing oh, look, they're putting a band together. It's not that kind of a doc. It just happens to be their band, you know, as friends now. So it was more following their careers, following how it works. And in the interviews with Carol, I'm telling you, it was the easiest doc I've ever worked on in terms of trying to get talent to talk about them. I mean, within the first day we met with these guys, and they said yes, and then they said, okay, the next day someone said, okay, well, Carole King said she'll do the interview in 3 weeks. It was like, oh my God, I didn't even have the story down. You know, I didn't know where I was going with it. I was winging it when I was meeting with them, you know, throwing them bullshit, and they went with it. But,
still
you know,
are.
still sucking you in. And then it was like Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, Jackson Browne, Phil Collins, Lou Adler. I mean, this was all within like 2 months. We had everybody in the can before we started in August or September 2019. Everything was in the can of the artist almost before COVID hit, thank God. Because we would never have been able to get Linda Ronstadt, and, you know, it would have been very difficult. I went and got Don Henley, I got David Crosby, later, and Neil Young, you know, so these folks came in later. And then we got these guys in the, you know, and it was, once COVID hit, then it was like, we got to, you know, slow down, but let's keep going. And then we started interviewing the 5 guys, and that's how it went down. But it was the easiest thing in terms of the talent that wanted to talk about them could not stop. Honestly, it was, there were no gatekeepers. Usually you have a gatekeeper. There was no gatekeeper. That's the difference, because they're still friends with Jackson. They're still friends with James. They're still friends with Linda and Carol. Do you mean that friendship never went away either? My father never, he wasn't hanging out with Brian Wilson, or Frank, or any of those people. That wasn't the way it went. These guys were friends with them.
Yeah. So that actually leads me to definitely a question that the younger, like aspiring session players or musicians, or whatever you want to call them, listening to this, they always ask. So they'd definitely be good to put this to Leland. Bearing in mind how easy it was for Denny to get those interviews. To what extent do you attribute your success in being able to work with all these amazing artists down to all of your musicianship? How important is also the sort of, being very pleasant, being a good hang and all of that, versus the musicianship, which has obviously been there all along?
I think it's incredibly important to be not in a phony or kind of creepy way of being somebody they want to hang out with, but we all really had a mutual respect for each other between the band and the artists we were working with. Everybody is very, very engaged. It isn't a separation of church and state kind of a thing. It's we all got along great as friends. And I think that was one of the things I've always looked at my career. A certain chunk of it was an opportunity came to me back in like 1970 that I had whatever they were looking for. I had the ability to do it. So that happened. But also just the fact that, like, when we're in the studio, we become more engaged than just hired help. Always go and listen to playbacks, throw out suggestions, make suggestions on something, even if it's to the point of saying to the artist, are you sure about the key? This might sound better. You want to just try it, maybe down a half step, because it sounds like, we're more engaged than playing your part, and then decisions are made in the control room, and you're just sitting on your phone or doing whatever. Or the relationship we've had, and this is with for me almost every artist I've ever worked with. It's not just the Phil Collinses and James Taylors. I've worked on thousands of records with people nobody's ever heard of or may ever hear of. But to me, I have two options when the phone rings. I can say yes or no. And if I say yes, it comes with obligations. And the obligations are ones I create for myself about being engaged, being on time. There's a multitude of things that I consider make this a profession. And a lot of guys are real lax about it. They just kind of act like they don't care, or like, oh, my playing's good enough, that'll get me by. And at times they don't get a call back because the person just didn't get the vibe from them like they really cared about their project. But we've gone in really deep with most of the artists we've worked with, and I can honestly say, like, I've enjoyed that aspect of this so much, to be able to work for me in many, many genres, from television and movies and country and jazz and hip hop and rock, to have friends and compatriots in all of these genres has really been nice for me. It keeps everything fresh and exciting by having something, to kind of have to pull your big boy panties up and go for it stuff. So, but it's a hard gig. I mean, everybody always kind of looks at it and goes, "Oh, it's got to be so much fun." It is fun, but it is hard. You got to be on your game all the time. And there are times you walk in and somebody plays you their music and it sucks. It's just horrible. But you do it the best you possibly can and do all you can to try to make it better. knowing that probably nobody's ever going to hear this. There's a lot of projects that become vanity projects and somebody's paid for it and stuff. But, you want to
Here's a
make
question. Did you ever have something that was, oh God, I can't believe this is so bad, and then it became a hit? You don't have to name it.
Yeah, no, that's the number one record. And other times where you play on something that you think is one of the best things you've ever worked on, and it doesn't even get released. Yeah. There's some albums I worked. They may have had a change of hierarchy at the label, and what happens when that goes down is generally the new people who are coming in, they want to get rid of everything previous to that and only want their stuff to be. So some of these great projects that were right on the edge of being finished get canned. And you just sit there. I went through this with Mac Davis. Mac, I loved Mac Davis, and we did an album with Jack Nietzsche producing him. And when we did this album, it was kind of like somewhere. If you ever heard the last album that Johnny Cash did, which was really dark and it was almost like Nine Inch Nails kind of a vibe to this thing. And when we did this album, we did there's a classic old song, Maybelline, but we did it really slow and dark. And when they turned it over to the label said, "This is incredible. Who is it?" And they said, "Well, it's Mac Davis." They said, "We can't release this." It never got released because Mac's audience probably would not accept. And every time I would talk to Mac after that, we would go, "But that album,
See, now I wonder, where is that at? That's the thing I always say. There's so much of that out there. And it's like, why not try to find it and release it today? What would happen? It would be really cool.
It would.
It'd be a huge audience.
Yeah, I have no idea who possesses that. Mac is no longer alive. So I have no idea what it is. But, there were times like I remember recording It's Raining Men with the Weather Girls. But when we cut that originally, the song was written by Paul Jabara and Paul from Paul. God, how can I be blanking here? From Jesus, my brain is a keyboard player. It is. It's like,
Billy Preston?
No. Paul from what's his Letterman show?
Oh, Paul Schaefer.
Schaefer. Okay, so it was Paul Jabara and Paul Schaefer wrote that song. Paul Jabara was supposed to be the artist on it, and because it was going to be this big, like gay anthem at that point. And when they finished it, they kind of went, this is not really what we want. So they got the girls who were called 2 Tons of Fun and renamed them the Weather Girls, and then they recorded it, and it became like the anthem of the disco scene and all of that. But when we were cutting it, we're all just kind of going, really? And here it is, to this day, as soon as that song starts, people all just start dancing and stuff. So you just don't, I mean, if you knew, I would definitely be a shitload richer than I am now if I knew all of that stuff. But, I feel so really kind of blessed that I've been able to kind of take this journey that I've had my whole life. And for the fact that it's still going on. I mean, I just did a session the other day for an artist from Helsinki, and they just released an album by this girl, Lari Basilio, who's like this monstrous guitar player out of Brazil. And we did that with Vinny Caluta playing drums. So, I mean, I'm so grateful, man. Anytime the phone rings and somebody calls me to do something, I still feel like a kid in a candy store. I'm thrilled to get a call and go in and potentially maybe meet some players I've never worked with before, just to.
You must have met so many people but no one could even conceive of. And it's so thrilling to have this documentary get made, just to document all of your careers in some way that's like this high profile, I think is wonderful. And what I wanted to know as well is, where is this first festival that's coming up on Friday, did you say?
Yeah, we start at Woodstock on the 30th, which sold out, which is great. And then Leland and I go to Wichita, Tallgrass Film Festival, the next day. And then the next day we fly to Nashville. And it's crazy. I mean, because it's like 1, 2, 3, and then we come back. And when's this airing, Tom? When are you going to put this out?
This can air whenever you want it to, whenever would make most sense promotionally for you. When do you think that will be?
That's what I'm wondering, is because I'm thinking if it doesn't go out this week, which it sounds like it's too close anyways, why don't we put it into mid-October, if that's okay?
Because we've got San Diego.
Mid-October, that's 2 weeks. That's crazy. It's like, oh my God, we're already there, because we go to New York City. We're not supposed to announce it, but we go to New York City for the Doc Fest, and then we're in St. Louis, in Coronado, and so that's where we.
San Diego, San Diego, Phoenix.
Phoenix, yeah. So we're bouncing around.
So this is a really crucial time for you, and I mean, obviously, it's difficult to say exactly, what you are aiming towards with everything, but this release, what would make you
it's
happy?
Weird because what would make me happy
in terms of like what would be like what would a good release schedule look like?
Together, just put myself to do it. Someone would come in and just say, yes, we want to buy this from you people, and this is great, and we're going to publicize it. Basically what we do now is, because we're grassroots, meaning like it's still us doing it, we're going to hit the festivals, we make the most noise we can. When I go to town, it's something I kind of learned and also developed, but I learned some things from the musicians. Basically every town I go to, I try to hit every music store, every music school, every studio, and I tell them ahead of time, hey, I got this film, I'm coming into town, da 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 da. And basically I try to encourage them to tell their students or come on out. And that's how it works, because the more people I get signed up, in a sense, they start spreading the word. It's like literally 10 people tell 10 people, now we're up to 100 people, and it keeps going. We didn't have 2 weeks ago, we had nobody signed up on the website so that they could see that. Then once we put the trailer on there, now we're at like 2,000 people. So those 2,000 people need to tell another 2,000 people. And what that does is it gives credibility to us for when all of a sudden distributors go, oh yeah, I heard about that. I mean, it's crazy. It really is crazy, but that's how the Wrecking Crew made it.
I remember
just
you
kept
saying.
traveling.
But I was literally. You have to do that again. Was there not a case of someone just saying immediately after your success last time, and bearing in mind this subject matter?
Well, we had investors this time. That's the difference. My wife would have killed me if I put any money into this one. I would have had my ass killed. So there were people that believed in it to invest. But you still have to find the distributors. So you have private investors, and you get that, and then you go to the big boys, and everybody wants. Lee knows this business can suck, suck the soul out of you. You think it's going to be easy the second time. It's like we've already proven it, but in a sense, we've already proven it with the first film. And you know what? That's why when people see. When they're getting the festivals are getting this film and going, oh yeah, and now at least they take a look at it quickly and they go, yes, we love it. That's the great thing for me, is being accepted.
You're coming in with creds at this point.
Yeah.
With the Wrecking Crew, the thing you had at that point is a name that people that understood the music business and all that, the name Tedesco carried a shitload of weight. Because his dad was one of the greatest players that's ever graced this industry. So that even if they didn't quite know what was going on, they'd say, I wonder if any relation to Tommy Tedesco. But that would be inside within the business.
That's inside.
Yeah.
But now we're dealing with the actual buyers, they don't give a shit. They go, it's like,
but the fact
that's giving me the cred to talk to the players and the artists.
yeah,
And that's been the best part. And, thank God my father wasn't an asshole. That's, he was a very giving person. So that would have been, if he was some of the other people that we know in the business, I don't think it would have ever gone anywhere, so.
He was the best. He was the best. I love Tommy.
I think that, I would love to think that the people would, give a shit, like in the sense of the minute they hear the name, any of the musicians involved in the Immediate Family movie, with the music they've been involved with, and the Wrecking Crew movie. But as you say, I guess it is, it is for people who know their stuff.
But also they know it, but they don't know that they know it. That's the crazy thing about it. Until they see the films and they see this, but it's really it's always a business. So we need to make sure, and I say this, all of us, and your listeners and viewers, it's like, hey, you need to look at that trailer and go, oh yeah, or share it on Instagram or share it on this, because that's how we get it out there. And because these podcasts are huge for everybody. The importance of a podcast, we didn't have that. I didn't have that in 2015, but I knew when I went into a town, it would be 2008, 2010, or whatever it was, I would find a local AM station, where there was talk radio, because I knew talk radio can hit thousands of people very quickly. Do you know what I mean? And it gets your message across, so that was the way and so podcasts now are just, are saving grace for these films, I hope, I know that the listenership, or a large proportion of this listenership, are going to be absolutely thrilled about this movie, because it's basically all the music that everybody's spent their time listening to. No, I mean, that is the greatest thing for me. I was, always second guess yourself. Can I pull off a second film? But I could only pull it off as if these guys were willing to go there, and they didn't hold back. They were given. They were very giving. Because sometimes you ask questions that might be a little hard to talk about, or things that come up, but they were amazingly. There's no holding back at this point. They just give it to you, and that's what's so much fun.
Well, I can't wait to see this movie, and also I just think it's so brilliant to document the musicians who've played on all these records who don't, in my view, get enough credit. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I asked Leland about, because there's somebody who is a dear friend of mine. And my girlfriend's, who's another of the great session players, Nigel Olsen, who Leland played on some of Nigel's solo records in the 70s. And I think you recorded a great one of your YouTube episodes about this album, but I just wanted to ask you directly, do you have fond memories of those sessions? And I mean, what an all-star cast was involved in making those records?
Absolutely. And plus Nigel and I got to do, like we did Atlantic Crossing with Rod Stewart. We played on tracks together on that. When Elton hit town, it was like a hurricane came into town with Dee Murray and Nigel and Elton just kind of changed the music scene. And so the minute I got a chance to work with Nigel, and then later on with that group of people, I loved it. I loved, Nigel, and plus I grew up a car guy, and Nigel was like a Ferrari guy. He used to race Ferraris, but he has Nigel has such a unique sound to himself. His approach to playing and stuff was always just great. He's the first guy I saw that wore gloves when he played and stuff. But just meant a delightful man to be around. And it thrills me to see him still out there, with Elton. That's one of those incredible relationships that's gone on for decade after decade, a couple breaks here and there, but for the most part. But yeah, Nigel's great. And I really, like with my YouTube channel, really try to pay respects and honor all the players I've worked with over the years. I mean, artists are one thing, but you've got this whole wealth of musicians behind them whose names aren't on the marquees in front of the venue and people are not aware of. And it's really fun for me to, turn people on to all these people. And that's the weird part of again, with the movie is it'd be one thing if Denny did a documentary and it was a documentary about Phil Collins. Well, you got to give an audience right there that are Phil fanatics who would go see anything at that point if Phil's name was on it. But basically, we're going into something where so many have no idea who we are. And so we're really tossing a lot of fate to the wind that this is going to be discovered because it's an incredible story. And when the movie starts, it's a really fabulous thing where there's this tree, and in the root system of the tree is all of us, and every leaf on this tree is a different artist's name.
Oh yeah, I've seen the poster.
It's
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable because I mean, I as a musician, and for what I do, I live for today and tomorrow. I don't think about yesterday. So all of a sudden, seeing your career on display that you never think about it's a weird moment. It's really strange. But when I look at like the Wrecking Crew, to me that movie should be required. Every music department in every school in the world should have that, along with the other ones, Standing in the Shadows, anything that's paid homage to the kind of unsung heroes of the music business. It's such a valuable story for aspiring musicians, because not everybody's going to be the artist. I mean, there's a finite amount of people that are going to be up there on the marquee, but they come and go. Yeah, but you can be one of the guys that when they're not working, you got something else going on and you keep going. You may not make the huge bucks that they do, but I've always looked at my career as I always wanted to be the tortoise rather than the hare. I love the idea that, 52 years into it, I'm still working my ass off. I'm already talking to people about work next year, and I'm already having to turn some work down because I'm already busy, and I'll be 76 when all that's going on. I'm grateful. I'm grateful every day for the opportunities that are still here. And this movie, I think, is just But this movie, I think, is really going to blow people's minds. It's quite a journey that Denny took us on this, and it's really his approach to us.
It was like, that's the best thing about it is for me, it was like still. Yeah, everybody assumes you know everything when you go into this. You must do all this research and da 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 da. In a lot of ways, I don't know shit. There's my friends and some family members have a lot more knowledge of the music than I will ever, honestly. And it's like, for me, it's like I want to learn as much as the viewer because I get off on it. That's where I'm enjoying it. It's like I don't know the answer sometimes to a question. Most of the time, I don't.
The first screening I saw when it was still, I still haven't seen a finished screening, but the first one, things.
You remember what Jackson said?
I didn't.
Jackson Browne was there, and Jackson goes, "I've known these guys for 50 years. I didn't know this stuff about them." Wow.
It's
and I'm sure you know things too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I talk to anybody in this business, I'm always finding new things that I never knew, no matter how much time we've spent together. Somebody will just drop one sentence and you go, what? Really? No matter how much you think you know somebody, there's always going to be those moments that come along that just kind of catch you off guard and you go, wow. And I think, that's, to me, it's a voyage of discovery. And I think it's a real enlightening thing because most people don't know what goes on in this business. They kind of think, well, people go in a room and they play a song and it's over. they have no idea the amount of work that goes into making records. And, cutting the track is one thing, but then overdubs and mastering and all the things that come into play, promotion and all the different fingers that are in the pot. And this kind of stuff opens up that. The Wrecking Crew did too. It's enlightening. If somebody really wants to know more about it, this is really the gold standard for going for it.
Yeah, and well, all of the names, all of your names, all of the names of the musicians in the Wrecking Crew, but particularly when I've been talking about doing this podcast episode to any musicians out there, especially younger musicians, and I say who's coming on the podcast, people actually act like it's Phil Collins or whoever, Don Henley coming on the podcast. People have a real respect for session players among musicians. I think it's just going to be a case of also getting just the regular punters, but there's already going to be such a huge audience for this movie. And when it comes to promoting it, Denny, like the previous podcast that we did on the Wrecking Crew, it's unbelievable, your story from the first movie. And I guess this mirrors a little bit music in a way, like to what extent is the work, the promotion, doing all of these appearances, doing the film festivals, is that even more work than putting together the movie itself? No,
at this point, that's fun. That's total. I think it's really is the best. I mean, I might complain, sometimes here at home is like I'm exhausted because I still do the posters to all the different stores and all that and postcards, but there's nothing better than, calling, hey, do you know the, I was listening to my nephew making the calls. He'd call somewhere in Wichita or a store and he would say, the Wrecking Crew, da, da, da. And they say, oh yeah. And then it was like, here's the next thing, we're coming out, da, da, da. And it was like, it was easy for him because people were recognizing that. So it's much easier now than it was before to sell the idea. And, and the other thing is, I got to say, and Lee probably knows this better than anybody, if you get out of LA and out of New York and out of the big cities, the rest of the country is so much more receptive to things. I mean, it's like here, it's like, God, it feels like you're trying to sell something. All I'm trying to do is give you a poster to put in your, yeah. And I feel like it's so easy, the rest of the country, they're interested and they're nice. It's just like, I'm here in LA and it's like, you feel like, and this is my hometown.
Yeah. I think one thing that maybe makes this slightly easier too, and it's sort of is what we've been talking about the whole time though, is when you were doing the Wrecking Crew, nobody knew who those guys were because they never were out there. They didn't get credit on album jackets. So when people were listening to Sinatra and listening to the Beach Boys and listening to the Mamas and Papas, they didn't know they were listening to the same musicians on all those records. Yeah. Where the real blessing for us, and it'll always come back to this, was Peter Asher. Because Peter, when we started with James, insisted that our names appear on the album jackets. And so when James became like the face of a new genre of music, and all the labels started hiring singer-songwriters, they would look at James's albums as kind of the benchmark of what they would aspire to, and they saw our names on it, so they would track us down and hire us, the Jackson Brownes, but the Casey Kellys and all these different people that were all these aspiring songwriters. And then when we would hit the road, we would end up like with every town I'd go to, there would be people lined up outside with albums that we've played on, wanting them to be signed. So we have, we already have a certain name recognition and stuff because people have seen us on the road at concerts and stuff like that. And I have people like on Lyle Lovett's tour that we just finished. I had people writing to me going, I had no idea you and Russ were going to be playing. And man, when you guys walked out on stage, I was so glad I got tickets for this show. And and stuff. There's already a kind of a built-in thing there, even though we're sidemen. We're sidemen that have worked our asses off on touring and big tours. So a lot of people recognize us. So it's I think it's a little, once we get out there, it's going to be a fun thing to watch how people respond to this, because they might already feel a certain vested involvement, because I have people that write to me going, we've never met, but I feel like I know you.
I can imagine.
And I'm hyping, like, go ahead.
I mean, all of you have over your careers become as in the music community, I would say, you know, as bigger names as the artists themselves. But one thing I'm curious about, and both of you might have some kind of knowledge or exposure to this, and I guess the situation would have been different with the Wrecking Crew. But you hear sometimes, and perhaps it hasn't happened to any of you, about like labels or management, publicists, powers that be, trying to make sure that session players are sort of kept out of the spotlight, and that, you know, everything's going, all the credits given to the artist. Is that something that goes on a lot these days, or has it gone on? And is that frustrating? Because I always I think a lot of music fans feel that they wished some people got more credit. I know that you're some of the most celebrated session players and musicians of all time, but is that a thing in the industry that you've seen?
Yeah, I don't think it's one of these things where they say don't give them any credit. They just don't give a shit about the players. Yeah. You know, all they care about is product, selling product. Where I've worked on tons and tons of records where the artist was never at the sessions, we've never met them or anything like that. We go in and we do our job to the best of our ability, and it goes on. And for the most part, the label really could care less about who played on their record. They just want to see the thing sell. And if they had an artist, you know, like anywhere from like a George Michael to a you name it, I doubt if there was one person at the label who really cared who played on it. They might be fans of your playing, but they're not going to use you to promote the album. They're just going to go out and push the artist. And you come to grips with that. I mean, I've worked on a lot of records where, you know, this is always a bone of contention amongst players, where I've worked on things where I came up with a bass line on a project that became the hook of the song, but I got no writer's credit for it. But if it hadn't been for that line, the song wouldn't have turned out the way it did and been the hit it is. But if you really start making a big scene about it, they may never call again, and I really want to work. So it's a funny place to be in with this.
It is a weird thing, because it's also like, what are you going to do? It's like a doctor holding back. Well, you know what? I'm there. I don't know. You know, you try your best. The goal is to get the next gig in our business. It's like, we got this gig, we got to get the next one. What's going to get you? I'm going to play my ass off. Yeah. I'm going to come up with stuff. And it's just part of. That's how it used to be with the other guys, you know, and I'm sure it's the same thing. You just play your ass off. You can't start editing creativity.
Yeah, if you go in with the attitude that I'm not going to give it my all because, you know, I don't want to be used, then it's over. Your gig's over, done. Yeah. You go in and you give it the best you can give it, and you may be giving away a lot more than just your bass part or your drums or something like that. But that's what it is, you know. So, but as far as the labels go, you know, I think, you know, there's, you know, like people from the label might show up at a session and they're all excited. They come in and they recognize the guys that are there. They'll see me, or they'll see Vinny Colaiuta or Russ or Waddy, or, you know, any of the cats, and they think it's great. But the minute they walk out the door, they're not thinking about that anymore. They're just kind of walking out going, God, it sounds great. We got a hit record here, and done.
The other thing is, you know, it's funny because where you're talking about Peter Asher and all those, when you guys started getting the credits on the albums, that was an extraordinary time. And that went on for so many years. Now we're back to singles again. They're releasing songs as singles, and they're not even album covers. There's nothing to read. You know, how do you know what I mean? It's like, unless I'm missing it, I don't know if it's on Spotify or somewhere else. Are there liner notes on these things on Apple? I don't know.
Only
Well,
for the
even when
big
it got
fans
to the
who buy
point-
albums. It's
Yeah,
the
I mean-
big fans, isn't it? The people who buy records see liner notes. People who buy vinyl see liner notes. But for 99%, people are just on Spotify listening to one song again and again because it's the same song in the same playlist for like 2 years now. Hits are
and they're listening with earbuds, like through their phone or something. They're not having that unbelievable experience of sitting in front of great stereo equipment, big Macintosh power amps and big speakers, and getting that unbelievable visceral experience of listening to music. And so many of the projects we've worked on over the years were conceptual albums. I mean, they told stories from top to bottom. And one of my mantra, my personal mantra for this business is don't become an old fart. Because things have changed so much, and I love working. So I don't want to be like grandpa sitting there going, well, back in my day, this is how we did, but there are things that I miss, sitting there, being in a mastering situation and listening, creating the space between songs emotionally. How much space did you want when that first song ends and the second one begins? How did you want to end side A before you flipped the record over? And there was a whole journey that you took the listener on that was all very methodically worked out. And now, when people are going, they can change the order of a record. If they buy the whole record, they can, put it on random, only listen to a couple of tracks they like. It's a different world. And I would never begrudge it because people are still listening to music. But there's a lot of it that I think people are missing at this point. That was part of really the craft of making great records. Doesn't quite exist anymore. Or once in a while, there's still people that want to do boutique records. When I would go to the Capitol Records building and go hang out with Ron McMaster in the back, and he was remastering all this stuff because they started pressing vinyl again, and we were selling more vinyl than anything else. The pendulum's always swinging, and some things have come back. And it's hard if you got a new album to get it pressed in vinyl now because the backlog is so deep. On the immediate family wanted to do it, and I think they told us it would be 9 months before they could press vinyl on it because the backlog for vinyl is so huge now.
Have you not pressed it on vinyl then?
No, but we plan on it. We want to, but right now we're going to finish it and get it out there. But at some point we'll probably go ahead and do it. But it's just right now it's just we're not going to wait that long to release the album. So we're going to release it, whatever the most efficient way of getting it out. But we would love to do a vinyl release of everything we do, because that's our heart and soul, was always, living in vinyl.
Yeah. People do miss
Sounds
out
like a great
from
title.
listening to it, from listening to the full albums. Do you both listen to music now, like on Spotify, Apple Music, or do you listen on record, on vinyl or CDs, or recorded like old school?
A little of everything. And also I'm around everything so much that I don't spend a lot of time listening. Most of the time when I'm in my truck driving is when I'll listen to some of the different Sirius channels. I'll listen to Sinatra channel, and I'll listen to the Beatles, and I'll listen to Symphony Hall, and I'll listen to contemporary channels, and just get a feel for everything, because I love music as an entirety. So kind of any chance to listen to something is fine. But if I'm home, making time to sit down and listen to music is really hard, because it seems like I could use 26 hours a day, every day, just dealing with my life. And so to take leisure time to sit down and listen, pull out some records and put them on the turntable, even though it's sitting there, it doesn't happen that often for me.
Yeah.
But I do hear great. I hate when people say there hasn't been anything good since Inagata Davida and stuff. You kind of go, well, even that wasn't very good. So come give me a break. But it's one of these things I hate when people say, there isn't any good music anymore. I go, there's some great music being made. You may have to dig harder for it. In the same way, when I work with young artists, not even young. I mean, I work with a lot of young artists. It's interesting to go in the studio working with somebody who could be your grandchild. Yet the minute we start making music, we're all on the same plane with it. But it's a situation that I don't know. It's a very strange business on many levels, and I absolutely love it and I adore it. But it can be exasperating. But when I work with like an artist that's maybe getting self-financed to do their album, and we finish it, then what do they do with it? They have no idea, because in the old days, when you had a label, they would, you knew you were going to kind of probably get screwed by the label. I mean, that was kind of a given. But they had a machine for getting stuff on the radio, getting airplay, which doesn't exist anymore. So I get these people that, they make a great record and they start calling or writing me going, any ideas who we could, send this to or anything? Because there just isn't anything. You're going to make a quirky video and try to get it on TikTok or something like that hopefully will get attention. It's a difficult time for new artists, no matter how gifted they are.
Yeah,
the business is the problem.
It's funny because what Lee was saying about you used to hear that all the time at the Q&As after Wrecking Crew. They don't make music like they used to. And I disagree with him. Technically may be different, or it doesn't matter. I said, there is good music out there. The difference is when I was in 67, I'm only 6 years old and we only got a couple radio stations to listen to. And in those radio stations, the music that's recorded, if you go back 50 years, we're talking 17, there's nothing there. The only music from the big bands to the 50s, that was it. 20 years, maybe 30 years of music, of recorded music that you could listen to as a society. Nowadays, my kids, they have 60 plus, what is it? We're into 22, there's 80 years of music and they could have it 1,000 million different ways of hearing it and finding it. And that's the difference is I don't want to say too much. There's just so much option out there. It's there. There's a Lennon, there's a McCartney, there's a Ray Charles out there. They're out there. It's just got to find it.
Yeah.
Well,
and also we've all got it for free.
It's also, yeah.
We've got it for 10, $10 a month. We've got every record ever recorded. Beforehand, you couldn't afford, I still remember when I was like a kid, I couldn't afford to get like help. So I had to listen to With the Beatles for a year. Then I got help, etc., etc., etc. Now you've got it all. So it's abundance.
Well, yeah, certainly in the days of records. I mean, I remember so well, like going to somebody's house and hearing a record and going, I got to go get that. So you bought it. I mean, it was a viable business that could support you. Where once CDs came along, then all of a sudden, like if there was something you liked, somebody would get a burner and they would just burn, like somebody would buy it and then everybody would burn a copy, because you couldn't do that with cassettes, because after like one generation of it, it started to sound like crap. And now there's an expectation because of this past like 15 years or so that music should be free. Nobody wants to pay for it. And even if like you had CDs and you were going, well, we're going to charge $8 instead of $18. Well, if somebody can get it for free, why would they pay $8? I mean, it's a real difficult thing.
Missed the boat. They missed that boat a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad because so many people that when they actually could monetize it as a business, could devote all their energy into making music, where now they have to do other things to pay their bills and all that. Because when you start seeing somebody's had like 200 million hits on like on YouTube or something, and they made $300 or something. I mean, it's just staggering. Things that at one point, if you just got $1 for every view or every listen, you'd be doing great. And that's nowhere near what they were making back in the day. When I worked on albums that were selling, you know, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million albums. I mean, those people were making monstrous amounts of money with that stuff because it was treated as a commodity that was for sale and not just like somebody's hobby. You know, your own people are almost resentful of you charging for your stuff. You know, they kind of look at you. Weird. Yeah, it's weird. And it breaks my heart. But there are really talented people out there. But there's issues like, you know, with the schools like Berkeley and MI here in LA and all that. The one thing they don't teach is you graduate on Friday. What's Monday going to be? Because you get all these students that come out with monstrous chops and abilities, and there's not a lot of business for them out there, that viable business. So they have, it's a hard road to slog. And I don't want to seem negative about it, because when I would do like master classes and clinics, I always say, look at, you know, when the Powerball's coming up and things like that, they say chances of you winning are 150 million to 1. Yet the next day on TV, there's somebody holding that big cardboard check who won. Somebody's going to make it in the business. I mean, it's just, it's not as easy as it once was. It's a very different business now. But I feel we were fortunate to be in like the perfect storm when the immediate family or the section or each of us as individuals, when our opportunity came, it was a vibrant, exciting industry at that point, that you had as much work as you possibly could want, just like the Wrecking Crew guys. I mean, it was easy to do 3-4 sessions a day for us, 6 days a week if we wanted to. And there was that much music being made, where it's not that way anymore. But when I hear, like, I go to the trade shows and you hear like young players at these things, and you're just going, man, I wish you all the best. I take names down. If I can, you know, send somebody's name out, you know, and spread it out. I want to support the industry's future. You know, I'm at the tail end of my career, and there's a lot of people just starting theirs that deserve, you know, every opportunity. I don't want to see them taken advantage of because they got too much talent to waste. And I have no idea how I got into this discussion.
It's Spotify.
Yeah, it came from right. Spotify.
But did you flip the album or not?
It's like playing live, you know, I guess, because the record business no longer makes money. But, you know, touring is pretty much like the only thing that, I mean, again, COVID, you know, put a stop to that. But as that comes on its feet, how important is it for people to just be willing to go out there and play live? And I mean, even with the promotion of this movie, you're going out there, doing these film festivals, meeting people in person, and like what you organized, Denny, to promote this movie sounds really exhausting. So that's put a testament to the business side of things versus the creative, isn't it?
And the drag is there's no money to be made on these things. You know, it's not, we don't have a product, you know. Do you know what I mean? It's not, I'm not complaining about it. It's just part of the thing, you know. You have to somehow, you have to promote somehow, even if it's a phone call, even if it's a email. I sit here literally like, what stone is not turned over yet? What did I miss? Literally, it's like, oh, you know what? I could have done that. And yesterday sent Lee and I did a little spot for Wichita. You know, just, hey, this is Lee and Denny, da-da-da, we're going to be in Wichita, da-da-da. All right, send that out. And that's where those people are going to be sending it around. So it's like, you got to keep thinking about promotion and how to keep the business running, you know.
And it's not a concert that's coming. So
no.
Not like you're charging people to come in and hear your music. This is all promotion. But I think from the music standpoint, touring's absolutely critical. And some people can make a really, really good living at it, and other people, you know, they want to work and get out there. But, you know, the promoters have suffered through over 2 years of COVID. So they're not cutting the deals that they once cut. They're trying to, you know, like, you know, readdress. readdress some of the losses that they felt during these 2 years, because a lot of places went under, a lot of clubs and stuff went under. But I know from my standpoint, I would tour if I had to make a choice between recording and touring, I would still choose touring. I love the immediacy of like I pluck a note on my bass in the studio. That note can be scrutinized for a week, and they can sit around and, well, let's move it here. Let's pitch. Let's do that. Man, when you're playing live, it's over like that, and you're on to the next note. So there's none of that part of it. And I love looking down and seeing people's faces when you're playing that are loving what they're getting. It's just a joy. The tour we just came off of with Lyle Lovett was incredibly hard. We had a 15-piece band, and we went out and we did 60 cities in 74 days on this thing. It was a grind. My God. And we lost at one point lost 9 guys because of COVID out of the 15. But we never missed a show. We went on and did everything we had to do. And the minute it ended, we were kind of going, oh shit, it's over. You know, it's like, it really is a joyous thing to play music live. To me, I'm fortunate that I never had to make the decision of one or the other. But I really do love, I was always a band guy that I loved playing clubs. You know, that was a real big part of my upbringing. So, you know, when the first time I walked into a studio was literally the first time I ever walked into a studio, yet I was going into the studio as one of the new A-list players, having I had only been in a studio once before. In 1968, the band I was in, we ended up cutting some demos, and that was it. And the next thing I know, because of my relationship with James, as soon as he hit, we were off and running, kind of going, what the hell's going on? I mean, it was really an amazing experience to have your career developing at, you know, you went from 0 to 100 in a second. You know, there was no build up to it. It was like there. Do you remember
how long Sweet Baby James is the first note, right? Is that the first one you did, or Mudslide?
Mudslide was the first one, but that wasn't my first studio album. Yeah.
With James though, what's your first?
I think it was Mudslide.
Well, how long did you remember? How long it would have taken? How long did Peter take on those albums?
Maybe a week or two.
Wow.
You know, but then they would go back and you know, deal with it. But a lot of that stuff we were doing right on the spot. I mean, James would sit down with his guitar and start playing, and there was no charts or anything like that. Yeah. So when it came together, but the thing that was good was the musical camaraderie between me and Russ and Kootch. And then when Craig came into the scene, Durgy, the ideas came fast and furious, and so it wasn't like we were laboring for long periods of time. I remember, I think it was on Mudslide. I think there was a string date on that the string date ended up costing more than the entire rest of the album, and they didn't use it. And when it was you know, but our stuff was pretty fast and furious in there. And most records, to me, if you really are spending a great deal of time working on it, it just means you weren't prepared. You really didn't know what you were doing. So you're spending a lot of time in the studio working on stuff. When I did Spectrum with Billy Cobham, we cut all our tracks in 2 days on that thing. Yeah. And it's still to this day, from 1973 to now, people still talk about that album. It's like one of the quintessential fusion albums. And it was all just raw energy, just 1 or 2 takes of each song done. So, wow. But
did you have the music to that before? Did you have the music? Did Billy give you the music before on that one, or you just walked in?
We knew nothing till we got in the studio. And worked out the heads and stuff, and figured out, you know, parts to do, and then we just counted it off, and boom, done.
Unbelievable.
And Yeah, I mean, but the beauty of this business is there's a certain kind of outline that almost everything follows in it, yet all the details are totally different every day. So you can't become lackadaisical or assume things are going to happen, because every time you walk in a different room, different players, it may be a similar kind of music that you've been doing, but something's going to be different. So you're always on your toes. It's not like working in a factory where you're dealing with the same part every day, and you could almost do it asleep. This is, the arts are so subjective that, every day is a new adventure. And I think that's the thing I find so fascinating. There's so many times where I have no idea what I'm showing up to. I just got a phone call and I'm in a studio and I have no idea what style the music is, what the songs are. Sometimes there's charts. A lot of times there's nothing. You got Nashville number charts. You got, completely written out charts. You've got to be so prepared where if they've got a chart in front of you, but they say, could you take it up a third? I think this was written too low, and you're trying to come up with parts and also transcribing in your head. I mean, there's so much that goes on that makes it terrifying and wonderful at the same time.
Yeah, well, you've managed to navigate it in so many different genres.
I bullshitted my way for 52 years.
and so with this movie, what can people do, Denny, to spread the word? How can people kind of support it at this stage or watch it? Can we go to is it immediatefamily.com to find out about where the film's going to be shown?
Actually, immediatefamilyfilm.com. Immediate Family Film, make sure you put the film on the end, or you'll go to their website, which is not bad. I said, no, it's not even yours. That's not even film. Yeah, and then and from there, basically you see the outtakes. You see check out sign up, see the outtakes, share them on Instagram, find us on Facebook. I know a lot of people don't do Facebook anymore, but some do. And we just keep spreading the word. The outtakes, I was just saying that I wasn't thinking to tell you, Leland, yesterday I was going through your interview, and it's funny because when you put it on a timeline, we did I think we did almost 2 hours of an interview, which is really long, for one setting. And it's so much fun to listen because you watch and you forget things that you said. And you go, okay, well, that's already in the film. That's already in the film. Oh, yeah, I love that line. Or I love that story. Like I just did something about you joining Toto. And the idea was basically the premise of what had happened, or my question, whatever the question was, Leland had to join Toto because Mike unfortunately had ALS, and the tour was falling apart, and he had to learn the book in basically a week. And that story was so amazing because it shows the professionalism of what you guys at this level can do, where they're ready to give up the whole tour for Toto unless they can find someone that can walk in and take Mike's place. And it was because it's never going to make it in our film, but you know what? I'm sharing it anyways. And that's the fun part about it. That's why I'm loving this, is I'm going through interviews, parts that will never see the light of day unless I put it out there. And it's not because it's not right. It's just because you have to feed that, and you only have 90 minutes in a movie.
You have to make some decisions.
There are some people out there who would probably watch 10 hours or 20 hours or whatever of everything, because it's all, that's a fascinating story about Toto, for example, unbelievable.
Yeah. In what you were with, I'm not going to quote Leland because he's right there, but I hate to do that. But it was pretty cool. And then, it's like the same thing happened with the Wrecking Crew, because I had so much time where I never stopped interviewing people. And someone said, my editor said, you got to stop interviewing people because I can't put everybody in. I said, but that's why God gave us DVDs. I said, because, I have 6 hours of extra footage in that DVD. And it's not I just wanted everybody's story to get out. There's so much more knowledge that can touch someone or entertain someone. And that's what I'm doing now, is like with these guys, Billy Bob Thornton talking about you and Russ, how you guys, work together and in calling each other. It's like I think it was you or Russ said about each other, it's like putting on a pair of old loafers.
Yeah, Russ, I think, says that in the thing. We've always equated that playing together. It's like digging through the closet and finding those old comfortable loafers and putting them on, going, oh yeah, that's good.
And you go, God, why didn't that make it in the film? It's like, this is the hard part, is now you're second guessing everything. So I should have put that in.
Yeah, I sit around and I think about other people that, we could have, interviewed for, like guys like Paul Williams, who are such fascinating interviews. And we did all of Paul's records, and I mean, it goes on, but at a certain point, you have to draw the line somewhere, and you just kind of go. It's like people, like with my book, and people go, so and so's not in. I go, we were losing our minds. I said, we got 6,000 pictures. I still have 7,000 I didn't use. Like Yo-Yo Ma's not in it, and I screwed up. And it is what it is. But I think, from my standpoint, I'm still I'm the most jacked up right now to sit in Woodstock and see an audience respond. See what vibe is going to come out of this. And I want to talk to people. I mean, we'll do a Q&A after, and then I'd like to hang out and talk to people and just see what's going on with this, because we're too close in our own way. So you really want to see.
It is scary in a lot of ways there, Tom.
Yeah.
In a weird way, because usually we would have had a lot of screenings before we got into festivals. We would have, really worked it. And the only reason we didn't is because we were getting good feedback, but also COVID, last year you couldn't, 6 months, you couldn't even have a group of people in a room. And so that's kind of like so in a sense, our first real screenings are festivals, which is very weird. I mean, that would never usually happen. I just think we just got, I don't want to say lucky, but we got in. I'm sure there's going to be things I'm going to go, oh, we should tweak that. And then, but we'll see.
Well, I think it's going to be a huge success, and I can't wait to see it. I can't remember the last time I was this excited to watch a documentary. And thank you so much for taking the time, both of you, to come on. I'm glad that the Wi-Fi settled down after that initial ordeal for you both.
There's nothing worse than prepping something like this, and then as soon as it starts, shit goes wrong, and you're going, oh, really? Come on. It makes you crazy, but it was good. Thank you for the invite. This is great talking to you.
No, thanks, guys.
Real honor. And thank you both, for the music and for the amazing documentaries and movies. And, have a great time at Woodstock. And I'll be in touch, Denny. Whenever you want to time this, we can make it happen then. There's no regimented schedule.
Yeah, give me a couple of days. That'd be great. I'll let you know.
Sounds good.
All right, guys.
And when it wins the Oscar, maybe we'll come back here and talk about that.
Sure.
That would be awesome. Remember the little people.
Oscar Mayer? Oscar, what are you talking about? The hot dog?
The little Oscar.
A little Oscar, a little hot dog. Okay.